Hi, and welcome back to my channel. In this video, I will be painting some jack-o'-lanterns. I'm using a Blackwing pencil, and I am just starting out by creating some pumpkin shapes on the page. I'm making them various shapes and sizes just to create some visual interest to the page and trying to fill out the page as much as possible. And I have already gessoed the page for this painting, and I'm drawing directly onto the dry gesso. So now that we have the general shape done of the pumpkin, I'm going in and adding the stem, and I just create kind of like a fun, uniquely shaped stem, and then I try to create like arches to create where the lines of the pumpkin would be, like those indents you see, to give it more of a shape so it's not completely like flat and smooth. Now I'm going in and giving the pumpkins some faces, so they're jack-o'-lanterns. And I'm trying to create a variety of different emotions. So we have like a surprised look in the middle, kind of a scary look in the upper right, and then in the upper left, I would say that's kind of like the typical jack-o'-lantern face. And then in the bottom left, I did kind of a scared face. And then in the bottom right, we have a goofy, smiley jack-o'-lantern. I'll be again using the Turner Designer Gouache, which I'm still trying to use up. I feel like I've only been painting with this lately. I'm using permanent orange here. And then I'll be using the Princeton Velvetouch brushes, which tend to be my favorite brushes for gouache lately. And I do keep a separate set of brushes that I use for gouache and then a completely separate set that I use for watercolor because I don't like mixing them for fear of ruining my brushes. So now I'm going in and I'm painting with the Turner Design Gouache. One thing I did notice is that I should have drawn these out first and then gessoed the page. With these pencils, I'm using the Blackwing pencils, and this type is very soft, so it's actually moving the graphite around. And it does this too when I draw and then put gesso over it and then paint on top of that. But you can hide it more because the graphite isn't mixing in with the design gouache. Ideally, I would use a different pencil, but I'm also trying to work through like all of my Blackwing pencils because I have quite a few of them. They're not my favorite, so I'm just basically trying to use them up. And for something like my sketchbook, this is like the perfect opportunity to experiment and make mistakes and see if there's a different way that I could be working. So what I did after I painted the first jack-o'-lantern on the upper left is I took an eraser and kind of wiped off that extra graphite, and that seemed to help out a lot with not having the graphite mix in with the gouache. So I was able to not have it mixed then, which seemed to work out well. You can still see the drawing even though I had erased most of that extra graphite. So that might be my process going forward. And I'm going over the pumpkin in the upper left with a second coat just to hide those lines a little bit more. And I'm going in with permanent yellow deep, and I'll be using this for like the carved edges to make them stand out more. And so it helps to show depth within those carved areas. Now I'm going in with burnt sienna mixed with some Prussian blue and then some white to create those stems. One thing I did notice about this gouache when painting on top of the gesso is it's not as silky and smooth to the touch. When you use this gouache directly onto the paper, it has like this very smooth, silky, like almost velvety feel to it. So if I were to actually do like a final painting that I would be selling, I definitely would not use gouache, or I wouldn't use the gesso. I strictly use gesso because I'm painting in my sketchbook, and if I don't use the gesso because I use so much water it actually ruins the paintings on the opposing pages. So that's the only reason I use gesso, and I only use it in my sketchbook typically, unless I'm doing like an oil painting or something. So that's something to keep in mind too. Like if you were gonna do this and you're just using a standard piece of paper like watercolor paper, just painting directly on the paper is probably your best bet. And then I painted the background sort of this dark blue color. It's actually Prussian blue again, to help contrast the jack-o'-lanterns and make them stand out more. And this is the part where I add in the black for the jack-o'-lantern holes. Typically, I think I probably should have used maybe even like a white or a bright yellow to make it seem like there's light coming through, but I don't know, I like the black. I think it gives a good contrast and adds more depth to the jack-o'-lanterns. And now I'll be going in and adding in some highlights to the stems and some texture just to make them stand out more. And so all I did was add more white to that brown color I created, and I'm just putting it on like the outer portion of the stem to make them stand out from the background, and then adding some texture in between. And I will be going in with a brush with just water on it and just blending them together to make it look more visually interesting than it is. So it's a quick way to add detail that's not that much work. So I'm just brushing over it with water basically and mixing those colors together to create the texture. And I'm going in and adding in those highlights where you see those lines that pumpkins have, so I'm just adding that in here. That is all that I have for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you try it out. Let me know what I should paint next. And thanks for watching. Bye.